it was the worst living situation I've ever had. I'd just left drama school. I'd just broken up with my partner. I didn't have a job. I felt pretty low leaving drama school. A lot of us did. I was in this £300 a month room in Turnpike Lane that had no windows. One of the walls was pantry doors that were sealed shut, and there was genuinely rats, mice and cockroaches in the flat. You know, when you look at times of your life and you're like, God, that was a bit of a low point. I couldn't even cry on the phone to my mum in my room because everyone could hear, because there wasn't a wall, it was pantry doors sealed shut. So I had to go and cry in the park across the road if I wanted to have a vent, and I was like, this doesn't feel good.
But let's go back to the very beginning and talk about how you grew up.
So I grew up in Newcastle. My family are Scottish, and I had a really nice upbringing. Really loving family, lived in a really nice area of Newcastle, and was really into theatre when I was younger. Really loved drama, enjoyed sport as well, and was just quite like a loud, performance-based child, I think. And I think from that there was always this love of connecting with people, and that's kind of what's led me on this journey in one way or the other, is just the enjoyment of creating experiences and connection for others.
Cool. When did your family move from Scotland?
Before I was born. So my dad worked, they were both doctors. My dad worked at the Freeman Hospital in Newcastle, which is one of the main heart units in the country, and he was a heart specialist. So before I was born, I think maybe making up 3 to 5 years before, and they've moved back to Scotland now.
Huh. Whereabouts in Scotland are they from?
My man is from Glasgow, and my dad grew up in Edinburgh, but his family are from Leeds.
Nice.
Yeah, and they now live in the middle of a field somewhere in the middle of, not the middle of nowhere, like a town/village just about an hour from Edinburgh by the coast, but their neighbours are 2 fields, so it's a beautiful place.
In Fife or something?
Not too far from Fife, like an hour from Fife. It's near North Berwick, which is like a little coastal town.
Cool.
It's lovely. I love going back there, and I spent my lockdowns there, so.
Yeah. Yeah, because I did a yoga retreat over New Year's on the Isle of Skye, and it was all like Scottish people mostly.
Love the Isle of Skye. My first word was Skye, because it was our dog's name, named after the Isle of Skye, because my family loved it there.
Amazing. And then do you have siblings?
Yes, I've got a little brother and a little sister. My sister's 2 years younger. My brother's 4 years younger. And we've all ended up we're very similar in lots of ways, but then quite different in others as well. Like my sister they both work in science. So my sister's just finishing a PhD in chemistry, and she is an insane athlete, I'd say. She got a golf scholarship when she was 18 to go to the States, and then decided to finish with that a few years later, fell out of love with it, and then started rowing for Bristol when she was at university, and then picked up rugby at the end of university, and now she plays for Saracens, the women's premiership team. So she's pretty impressive with her physical, where she takes herself to. And my wee brother he did a master's in, I always got this wrong, he always tells, I think computational maths. He did a master's in computational maths, and he is also, we all love movement in lots of different ways. He's just finished a horrendous sounding Ironman. We all enjoy outdoors and we all enjoy moving. We've just found different ways of doing it.
And so did you identify as being Scottish growing up?
No. Not at all. And I was definitely one of I think because I don't have Geordie parents, and because of the area I lived in, I never even thought of myself as Geordie until I moved down south, and I don't sound particularly northern or Geordie. Like, I think I sound like I'm from the north, but it's very unspecific as to like where. It's very soft. But since moving down south, it's bizarrely become so much more of my identity. Like, I really feel passionate about being from the north now, and I feel like it's a real integral part of me. But the almost more like the Newcastle side, and then my Scottish roots, I feel, is like my heritage. Yeah.
And what did your parents want for you growing up?
Us to be happy, very genuinely. I remember, and I've only really looked at this like properly recently and have been like, wow, I was really lucky. And you don't realise it until when you really think about it and speak to other people. Like, we all ended up, all of my siblings, being quite high achievers in different ways, and we always we've actively sat down and been like, why? We all tend to have this tendency to overwork, and we all lean into that, and it's something that we all really have to try hard to moderate. But my mum and dad were never pushy parents, ever. In fact, often they'd try and get us all to pull back, and so we were like, where did this come from, this hunger to work for all of us? And my mum, when I said I wanted to be an actor when I was like 13, 14, I was like, I want to go to drama school, I've decided. Most parents would be like, no. Especially coming from an academic family with doctors as parents. And I think about a week after I'd said it, I remember sitting in the car with my mum, and she was like, right, I've had a look, I've had a think, and if you want to do it, let's do it. She was like, it looks like it's really hard, but her thing was always, I just really want you to be happy. I never in the sense of coasting or being given lots of stuff, but just in the sense of, if this is what you want, life is short, we have one life. Work for it, but go for it. And I think I was on a breathwork course recently when we were looking at what we'd got from our family, and it really landed of like, I think a lot of the crazy projects and the way my career's ended up, and the belief that often like, I want to do that thing, I'm going to do it, comes from my parents actually allowing me to believe in myself. When I'd say like, I've got this crazy idea, and they'd be like, okay, if you want to do it, we support you, as long as you work hard and you show up, we're never going to tell you don't do that, which I think I feel really lucky to have, because I think it's given me a lot of confidence growing up, which I hadn't really clocked until recently.
Cool. And then, so did you pursue that path?
I did. I've had a few different paths. They all feel like they've been very important in reaching the next stage. I moved to London when I was 18, straight out of school, no job, no friends, no like connections in London. I was like, right, I just want to move, I want to audition, and I want to start a life. And I had a few super chaotic but like wonderful years, which kind of you can do when you're 18, where I worked night shifts in nightclubs, like breakfast shifts in cafes, like flyering in Leicester Square, you know, the comedy club flyers, like I was those, and auditioning for like awful fringe theatre. Like I did so many bad shows above pubs and like awful student short films, but I loved it. Like and again, I think I get this thrill and this joy off grafting sometimes. I loved the experiences, I loved the people I met, and it just, every time I'd get a job, even if it was like £50, I don't know, or whatever, I'd be so excited. And I did that for 2 years, I think.
Where were you living?
I hopped around. I started in Elephant and Castle, and then I moved to Archway, and then for a brief spell, before I got into Bristol Old Vic, which was the drama school I went to, I lived in a pub in Kensington. It was a great deal. You worked there, you got paid your full wage, you got paid tips, and you also, if you wanted and there was a room free, you just got a room for free.
Amazing.
Ridiculous.
Which pub was it?
It was called the Britannia, just off Allen Street, which is like 5 minutes from High Street Ken. And it's now, the flats have been made into function rooms, so the bizarre living situation is not there anymore. But I loved going out and partying when I was younger, and I definitely just had a summer of like being a 19-year-old living above a pub.
So much fun. And so you were able to make friends easily. Did you live with like fellow actors, or you just moved in with randoms?
So I lived on my own to begin with, and then I just picked up friends along the way. Like there was something about the naivety of being 18. Like I didn't, like now I'd feel very nervous moving to a new city, not knowing anyone, not having any connections, not knowing anything, whereas there was something about me that was like, I'm living the dream. This is it. I'm moving to London. I'm managing to make my own way. And I just, in my head, I just thought that everyone did that. And I first made friends through, my mum is Christian, and she was like, go to church, you'll make friends at church. And she was right. I went to church, and within like an hour I'd been invited to 5 people's house for dinner.
Wow. What kind of church was it?
It was a big church in I think Church of England in Bishopsgate. So it was called St Helens, and I've had an interesting relationship with religion over the past probably 10 years, but I think at that time I was still very much like, I would class myself as a Christian, and it was a really nice way to land in London, and then just made connections through work and jobs and auditions, and just kind of picked up groups of friends along the way.
Amazing. And your family was supportive?
Yeah, so supportive, and just so, I think they'd always had the view of, as long as you are working and you're not just kind of coasting and living, like, go for it. And like, I look back and I'm like, that was quite big of my mum to just let me do that. Like, not like let me, but just actually say like, we support you with this. Like, she dropped me off at my flat, and she turned around and she told me later that she cried all the way back to Newcastle, just being like, what was she doing? What have I, not like what is she doing, but just worrying about me. But she never let me see any of that. She was always really just like, yeah, if this is it, this is what you want.
And the goal is you would be applying to get into drama school?
Yes, yeah, that was because the drama schools I wanted to go to were conservatoire ones, and the intake is really, really small. I'd had an offer leaving school for one, but just not one of the ones I wanted, so I thought I'd wait and just kind of see what was out there. And I was so happy. I didn't love school, to be honest. It wasn't my favourite time of my life, and actually leaving it, I felt like I found so many more like-minded people in London, and I felt like I really found my identity when I moved down, whereas it was just the thing about school that I felt like I never really fit in.
Huh. Did you have a good group of friends and stuff, or it was like...
Kind of. Like, I've still got a few people I'm in touch with. One of them is coming this weekend, but I never felt like I had a really close group of friends. I was always like on the outside edges, and I was always a bit of a misfit, and always, I was just quite sad in school a lot of the time, I think.
Huh. Where do you think that came from?
I think I had depression and an eating disorder growing up from around about the age of 12, which I think pretty heavily impacted my teenage years. And it was during the time when there was a lot less talked or known about that sort of stuff, but I was pretty poorly and just really unhappy throughout that time. And there was just, I think, a lot of grief in our family in places as well. Like, I wasn't old enough to tangibly remember exactly what it was, but me and my mum have had conversations about it after, because I think there's no way that it can't impact you. Like, my uncle committed suicide when I was 11, and my mum was very, very close with him. And again, it's what we call bipolar now, but at the time it was manic depression. That was what it was called. And so there was a lot of, I think, understandably probably grief in the house, but that I didn't notice because I was 11. And then my gran, I think as a result of that, her dementia developed very, very quickly. and my mum was dealing with all of that and essentially became her primary carer, and then moved her down to Newcastle into a care home. And we had a few years, I think, which were really tough for my mum, where she was dealing with me, who was really struggling. My granny was really struggling, and when my granny passed when I was 19, 20, she doesn't have any direct blood relatives left, I don't think. They're all like either a great aunt or like a second cousin. I don't know what the definition of blood relative is, but like no mum, dad, brothers, sisters, everyone had passed away.
So, because it was your mum's brother,
yes,
and her mum, and it was only the two siblings.
Yeah, and her dad I never met my granddad on that side. He passed away from cancer before I was born, and it was during a time when it was believed that it was better for the patient not to know that they were terminally ill. But my mum was working at the hospital and taking him to appointments, and I can't remember exactly how, but she was told, and she knew that her dad was dying of terminal cancer, and she was just told it's better for him not to know. So she was carrying the weight of knowing that her dad was dying for a long time, but nobody else knew. And so I think she had a lot of... I think I look and I'm like, she's an incredibly strong woman, because she doesn't let a lot of that... I only found out when I was like 20, and occasionally, like now as we've got older, we'll suddenly have these heart-to-hearts where she'll share a bit more, and it's like, wow, okay, it's huge.
Yeah, and then I guess for you as the oldest child and a daughter as well, it's like taking on a lot of that, I guess, even like subconsciously.
I think so. We had one chat about it, because I went to therapy a few years ago, and I'd never really thought, even to the extent of like, I was struggling with burnout, and that's something I do still really have to address a lot, because I get very passionate about work. And I think on my first therapy session, I was like, I don't know how to stop working. And even just I'd never even vaguely linked that to having an eating disorder growing up. And then talking about it, I was like, of course, there are so many crossovers. And so that's when I started looking back and being like, okay, where do these patterns come from? Because I just never even linked the two. And I think it was the first time I felt like we'd ever openly even used the word eating disorder. Like, it was always just, I'm not well, and talked about it just a few years ago, and talked about the impact of some of the really tough stuff, like my uncle dying, and some of the stuff she had to deal with, and just how that maybe had affected us. And we just never discussed it before.
So were you able to discuss the emotions around you being unwell, or it was kind of just like, there's an issue and we're getting medical attention, or whatever it is?
Well, when I was younger, it was like a real struggle almost to discuss. I was admitted to hospital a few times, but I think it was always such like a elephant in the room sort of thing. Not even elephant in the room, that's the wrong word, but I think because obviously when you have an eating disorder, you lie a lot to try and just keep doing what you're doing. And so I'd constantly be saying, it's just because I don't feel well, it's just because of this. And I think my mum just desperately wanted to believe that was true. So we never really talked about it honestly until later, because it just sort of over the years slowly got better. I've dealt with it on my own in my early 20s, and we never discussed it until very recently, and it was the first time properly been able to actually acknowledge what it was and talk about it. So,
and did it make sense to you at the time why you were behaving that way with food?
No, I just knew that. I think there's a lot of stuff. I think one of the things is generationally. I think if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, there's always issues with every generation, but I remember vividly in my teenage years, we were in the size 0 trend, and literally on the front, I used to love, when I was 12, 13, gossip magazines like Heat, Like, oh, I hate them now. I think they're so bad. But like Heat, Now, all of them, I had this, me and my friendship group loved celebrity culture. And so I'd go and I'd buy them, and there was just literally pages and pages about size 0 and people's bodies. And I think that had an influence on me. And I was a little bit chubbier growing up, or not even chubby, I don't like that word, but a little bit curvier growing up. And when I was 12, because it was thought acceptable to do this, I was put on a diet, or like encouraged to be on a diet. I lost 2 stone quite quickly, quite healthily, but quite quickly, and immediately my popularity went like shooting up at school. And it was like, I think that just locked an association in with weight loss equals good, being overweight is bad. But then because I think when you're 11 and 12, diets like you shouldn't really be doing. And so when I hit my goal weight, if you like, and my mum actually stopped me, for she was like, I don't want you to lose anymore, I'm taking the scales away and you are, and that's it. But then I was like, I finished and I was like, I don't know what do I do now, because this was almost like a project. I don't know how to manage a balance. This was something that I was doing until I'd lost all the weight. Now I've lost it, I don't know how to maintain this. And that's what just started, I think, years of really struggling with overeating and putting on weight, and then really struggling with all the emotions of putting on weight and over-exercising, and exercising to just like torture yourself pretty much, and a real hatred of body, because there was this such a strong association in my mind when I was younger of thin is good, being bigger is bad. But yet mentally I just couldn't, I think what it boiled down to was I couldn't understand how to live with balance, and didn't know how to manage a balanced diet. And that wasn't from education, it was more just from this feeling of food being like a real comfort. And it took years, as in years. It's only in my mid-20s I'd say that I would actually say that I'd recovered, and I still always need to watch sometimes. Like I still sometimes, if I go past a certain number on a scale, notice I feel a certain way. But the reason I'd say I'm definitely, or I feel recovered, is that I'm able to talk myself down, and I'm able to kind of use different mechanisms in different ways to kind of self-regulate.
Yeah, it's so hard. Someone explained to me once that a psychologist, I think, that it's unlike alcohol, like smoking or something, which for some people they just have to cut that out completely, but you can live a life then without alcohol. But with food, like we need food to survive, so you have to like figure out the relationship so it can be healthy, which is really a much harder thing than being able to like cut something out of your life forever.
Exactly. And it was just such a big part, and I think I notice even when I talk about it I get a bit fidgety and a little bit uncomfortable, because it was so hidden for ages, and it wasn't like this big intervention that got it better. It felt like a slow drip feed over years and years of just slowly things changing for me. And that's, I don't know how common that is, but that's just the way it ended up for me. It just got a little better, and then a little better, and a little better. And I distinctly remember the point where I was like, oh, I think this is okay. I'd put on a lot of weight, about 3-4 stone in about 6 months to a year, because I'd started up a new business, I'd adopted a dog, I was in a relationship where we both just ate terribly, and my body was hugely different, and it was the biggest I'd been in 10 years. And I remember looking in the mirror and being like, I would like to change this, but I see, for me, this represents starting a new business. It represents lots of stuff, and I feel comfortable owning that, and I feel comfortable being like, this is how my body looks just now. And it was the first time I think I'd ever noticed I'd gained a lot of weight and managed to be like, and this is fine. And that felt really so liberating to come from that place. And I did lose weight. I lost 2.5 stone over the 6 months, and it was the first time ever I actually felt like I enjoyed the process. And that's what I mean, it never was a big thing. It was almost like these little penny drops over 10 years or so. And it's what's got me into movements, and what I love to preach and try and teach to others is why to do stuff. Like, I remember in drama school when I was still like on the path and struggling quite a bit with it. I was on like a post-Christmas diet, and I was in the movement studio and I was exercising, and I think there was just something that switched in my head that was like, I'm doing this because I want to feel good, I want to feel strong. And whereas before, exercise had always been, I want to do this to be thin, I want to do this because I don't like my body. And I think just little drop moments like that over the years, one at a time, slowly came in of I want to do things out of a space of love rather than a space of hatred. And I think that's one of the biggest things that shifted me into where I am now with my job and why I love what I do.
Amazing. Who suggested the diet originally when you were 12? Was it came from a doctor?
No, my family, and not in a way of genuinely being worried about my health, because I overate from a young age. Like, I think I'd always had this personality that I think a lot of people can probably identify with, of need of self-soothing. Like, self-soothing with, I think when I was younger it was food, and then it became a bad relationship with food, and then it became, when I was kind of recovering and stopping the behaviours, it was replaced by smoking and drug taking and alcohol. When I was in drama school, I was an absolute tearaway with that sort of stuff. And then after I'd left drama school over about 5 years, it started to be addressing like, okay, you are just switching from one to the next. What is it underneath all of this that's making you want to self-soothe so much?
And I guess work can be...
Exactly. And that was the penny drop with therapy. I was like, chronic overwork is just another form of self-soothe.
Okay, so you then went to drama school?
Yes.
After a couple of years in London. And then what was your path from that?
So I did 3 years in drama school. Mixed experience. I enjoyed lots of it. I didn't enjoy a lot of it. But the one thing that I got that launched me into the next stage of where I was I'd always enjoyed work. I really got a high off work, and again, I think it's that strand of healthy and unhealthy, but I think there is a healthy element to it as well as unhealthy. And I got a job teaching dance classes for hen parties at the weekends in my first year, because I'd always loved teaching. I'd always loved dancing, but I wasn't a trained dancer, so it would be drastically irresponsible for me to go and actually like teach a dance class to anybody. But for hen parties, I was like, it's just a good time, that's what it is.
How did that come about?
An advert through Gumtree. Dodgiest looking advert ever, but I used to just look through adverts on Gumtree, and it was how I managed to kind of carve stuff out. And they didn't even meet me, it was just a phone interview. And I'd had so much stuff like that when I was younger, where it would be like a dodgy looking advert and I'd say yes, and then just have this like random interview on the phone, and it'd be like, okay, I'm waltzing up to go teach salsa. Have I ever salsa'd before? Nope. I used to just have the balls to be like, yes, I can do this. I went to a professional dance audition once when I was 18, because I was just like, yeah, this is fine, I can do this. And then realised quite quickly, like, no, you're not a professional dancer, you can't do this. But that was such I loved it. From the moment I did it, I loved it, because I felt like I'd found this thing where I was like, I'm not selling people shorts because they're not looking to be trained in a certain way. It's not like I'm running a jazz class or trying to teach people technique. It's just people wanting a good time and to feel good. And I did it at the weekends pretty much every year throughout my first and second year at drama school. And then the one thing I'd always noticed was, I was like, I love this. The organisation is terrible. Every company I'm working for, it's really like, it feels quite chaotic. And I was like, I feel like I see how this is run, and I feel like working directly in it, I see with a few tweaks how this could be done a bit better. And I had, in my last year of drama school, a very delayed payout of £3,000 from, I fell through a hole in the floor at the big chain bar I was working for, and I was nudged by my manager to ask the company for compensation because I fell through a hole in the floor. And 5 years later, I didn't really fight for much or ask for much, I just gently asked for it. Got given £3,000, which was the most money I'd ever seen in my account. And for me, that was like, I don't know what to do with this, but was consciously aware of, if I just spend it, it'll go like that. And I think because I'd had this seed of an idea of like, I want to start this company, I was like, I want to use it for this. And then that way, if it doesn't work, well, it was like, in inverted commas, free money anyway. And if it does work, great. So when I graduated from drama school, I set up the company and it went really well.
And it was the Haynes dancing company?
Yeah.
As a competitor to the one you're working with?
Yeah.
Huh. How was the one set up that you were working for? Like, I've never heard of this.
Most people, this was the other thing, is it's a niche market. So the competition, like, there are more companies than you'd think, but that would be most people's reaction of like, I never really even thought that was a business, which made it easy to, if you did it well, succeed, because there is a lot of market for it, because for hen party activities, you're really limited in what you can do apart from drinking. Like, you can go drinking, like you can go on a weekend away, like, but activity wise, like stags often go like, I don't know, things and so like football or those Zorb balls, and dance classes are a really popular one for hens. But because it was such a niche market, it just meant that because I did kick the organisation in well, and because I'd been doing it for so long and seen the venues and could see the things that weren't quite going right.
What kind of things were that?
Just organisational stuff, or like, I was like, I feel like a lot of them are in dingy nightclubs and surely there's a bit better. Or just like the attention to detail, or the teachers that were being brought on, and it just all felt a little bit rough around the edges.
And the people running it, that was a full-time thing. They just had the idea that. Yeah,
but I think it's natural with any bigger event agency, especially hens, and it's not like a high-end budget activity. Like, it's not like you're going to, I don't know, like Ibiza and having a big weekend. It's like a medium to low budget activity. So often I think these packages are very much like, the person that organises them is then going through someone and then going through someone and going through someone, and so the care is kind of lost along the way, because it's not directly one person speaking to a group and then they're organising it. It's kind of lost along the way, and I think that's where the attention to detail gets lost, because I think with hens it's often like, yeah, okay, fine, we got it, venue booked, teacher booked, done. And not with all of them. I know some fantastic companies, but with some of them, and I think the ones I worked for, there was this like feeling of like, oh, as long as everyone's there, it's fine. And I think, and because obviously it was my baby as well, so I really cared. And I've always loved customer service as well. Like, when I worked in bars and restaurants when I was younger, I genuinely loved the customer service element, and really take pride in how to run things. And I set it up from my bedroom and had lots of help.
Which was setting it up, was like building a website.
Yeah, so the other thing that was relatively like good or easy was financially, compared to something like opening a restaurant or a shop, there was much less risk cost-wise, because bar setting up the business, website was my biggest expense, and then some marketing, But apart from that, the expenses only came in if the work came in. So it wasn't like, oh God, I've paid $5,000 for a month's rent, and if I don't get work, I'm losing it all. It was like, I've paid for the setup. If work comes in, that's when I then pay for venues. That's when I then pay for teachers. So there was that element of low risk compared to other stuff, which was very nice. But yeah, I got a family friend, and it was like a friend of a friend of a friend. My mum met this woman at yoga camp who she was talking to, being like, oh, my daughter's thinking of setting up this business. She was like, oh, I know someone who works in marketing who maybe could talk to her. She talked to me, and she, for a low cost, just taught me how to market.
And how did you market it?
To begin with, she taught me the basics of SEO, which is search engine optimization, which is just how you rank on Google. And again, based on the fact it's a niche market, if you did it well, it was like, I think I got to number one quite quickly, or like in the top few anyway, quite quickly. We were number one after a few years, and I got a lot of traffic in through just organic search. Taught me how to set up Google Ads and get a good campaign, and we got a lot of traffic through there, and that's where majority of my traffic ended up coming from. So it was a really beautiful way to get, even though when I kind of hit the point of all I could learn without actually becoming a professional SEO developer, because they have a totally different skill set. I'm talking like I knew the basics. And then at one point I was like, I need to, now we've got the budget, hand this over to someone who can really do it, whereas rather than me just doing the bare bones of it. But even just having an understanding of like how to get clients, how to do that, and the fact it was through the help of just asking people and learning from others, was it felt really lovely.
And how did your former employer feel?
Oh, they didn't know, care. It was a very different almost market. We were like, yes, it was the same, but they were a big company that were a bit of the lower quality, but just like mass. They were like churning them out loads and loads. So I don't think they ever minded or even probably knew, because they were just so many bookings.
Got it. And so what were you motivated by at this point in your life? Like, were you really trying to make the acting thing work, or you were like, it's fun to experiment making money in other, or you just wanted to learn or do good work? Or...
I think probably the last one. I think I always lean into, and I think that's why I've had a few different stuff, what lights me up and what makes me feel passionate, and that's where I'll go. And I think because acting, when I left drama school, I had an agent, but it was pretty quiet. I had to get a few auditions, but not loads. In my head, I was like, I want to set this up with the idea at the time of being like, so that then I don't have to do, because I'd done years of the cafe and pub work, and I felt like I'd just done the time that I wanted to do with that sort of work, so that I could have something alongside acting that would earn a living. And then acting just got more and more on the back burner, and then I called it a sabbatical when the company it kind of blew up the next year, and I got an assistant to help and was totally up to begin with. That aligned with the time when I was like, I'd gained the most weight I had in years. I was just like, it just exploded way bigger than I thought it would, and I was like, acting can take a pause, and then it just kept taking more pause, and
wow, so the business went really well.
Way better than I could have ever thought. Because it was always just a small project to begin with. And then it was just the thing of niche market, did it well, had good branding. And it was about a year after, it was a year after I'd launched it, that it was January, which is peak time for people inquiring, because after Christmas, people propose, engagements, and people are often planning summer hen parties. And the amount of inquiries I had in just went insane. And I wasn't teaching the classes. I had a team of teachers around the country that did it, but I was doing all the admin at the time, and I'd literally get up at 8 a.m. every day and probably be at my laptop till about 10 o'clock.
Wow.
It was a lot.
Oh, okay, so you were based in Bristol.
I'd moved to London by this point,
okay.
Straight out from Bristol to London.
But it was a national business. because you just need to hire the venue, make sure a teacher turns up.
Exactly. I was like, if you can get, I was like, the fundamentals you have to get right that I think sometimes people don't put enough value on. Good venue, or at least an okay one that doesn't make people go like, oh no, when they arrive in, which I taught at some venues that you'd see people be like, oh no. And then a teacher that, as much as you can, find someone that's good and reliable. And for me, the answer to that was, it's harder now in more economically challenging times, but just pay them a bit better, make people feel valued, really explain and be clear with what you want. And if you just pay them that little bit more, then they're likely to hopefully value you a bit more. And the one thing that's carried on through, I think, throughout, and I found it harder working for bigger corporations to carry this through, because it's just not what people do, but all the time. So I'm like, just be a nice person to work with. Like, I ended up chatting to some of my teachers and getting to know some of the London ones quite well, and I noticed that a few of them they were like, we will bend over backwards for you, because you do the same for us, and you will, like, because a lot of people are performers, if they got a job, I'd be like, we'll make it work, we'll find a way, and would really, I was just value the people you work with. And I think I noticed, I was like, people are showing up, people are being lovely, people are just wanting to do a good job. And it really made me land and go like, it's so important to try and just be a good person to work with and work for.
Oh my god, this is so cool that I've just never even heard of this.
I would talk about it
market.
for years. Yeah, it's funny because it's totally led me on where I've ended up, but it's so I've just sold the business this year, so it's,
oh my god,
yeah.
amazing. What year is this, by the way, as
this
well?
is 20, yeah, okay, this is end of 2016. I started the business from this, literally, when I say, oh, it was the worst living situation I've ever had. I'd just left drama school. It was, I'd just broken up with my partner. I didn't have a job. I felt pretty low leaving drama school. A lot of us did. I was in this £300 a month room in Turnpike Lane that had no windows. One of the walls was pantry doors that were sealed shut, and there was genuinely rats, mice and cockroaches in the flat. And I remembered, and because it was pantry doors sealed shut, and it was a particularly sad, when you look at times of your life and you're like, God, that was a bit of a low point. That was one. And I couldn't even cry on the phone to my mum in my room because everyone could hear, because there wasn't a wall, it was pantry doors sealed shut. So I had to go and cry in the park across the road if I wanted to have a vent. And I was like, this doesn't feel good. So that was where I set it up. I moved quite soon after I moved in there. But 2016 I set it up. 2017 was like the launch year when I was doing other jobs, but it felt like I was just consistently, I just loved it, because consistently it just grew, and I was like, okay, this has got bigger and it's getting bigger. And then 2018 was when it just went like woof and exploded. And 2019 was dead busy as well. Got an office space, I got an assistant, and then the pandemic hit in 2020.
So it was like no more business, basically.
Yeah, it's what transitioned me into what I'm doing now. I struggled a lot with it, because I'd had, obviously you book a year, and people book a year in advance, and I had...
Really?
Yeah, people book 2 years in advance sometimes. And I had...
And this is like for like a 2-hour dance thing?
Yeah.
Because I've organised a Haynes before, but it was like a couple of weeks before.
Oh, don't get me wrong, some people will call you on the day, but like, no, most of the time people do it in advance.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No.
Okay, so people were booking years out, and then...
And I had the busiest year I was set to have lined up. And then COVID hit. And like now we're kind of used to the, like, not that I think we'd all hope it didn't happen again, but if when the country's in lockdown, we'd be like, okay, we know the drill, we understand this. Whereas at the time we were like, this cannot happen. We don't, like, this is incomprehensible. And I was like, I don't know what to do, because I fell through pretty much every loophole of government support. I'd paid a huge, like, awful tax bill the year before. Like, small businesses do get really hit hard tax-wise if you pay it properly. Like, the amount I got taxed was similar to the amount I earn, and the amount my turnover was like, how has it gone from this to this? And it was just tax. And because I was not a sole trader, I'd moved to a limited company because we were doing quite well. We didn't get the self-employed allowance, and because I didn't own a property, we didn't get, I can't remember the exact details, but we didn't get a full
relief.
Yeah, I got, I think, £500 a month, which just immediately was in refunds, like my inbox in week one.
Yeah, because there would have been no insurance policies and
it was, I had COVID. Like, it was never diagnosed, but it definitely, I'm like, I was up at, it was how I ended up in Scotland for lockdown. I went up with my mum. I was going for a trip to just spend a week there, and the pandemic was starting, and it was a bit like, try not to travel. And I called my mum and was like, should I come? And she was just like, yes, of course, come on a train, don't be stupid. And I came up and then just got really ill the next day and was really unwell for a few weeks. But my inbox, I'd never seen anything like it. It was hundreds of emails a day, and I didn't know, like, I don't know the answers to them. And I remember being like, I'm so ill. And I was sat in my parents' kitchen just crying my eyes out, being like, I don't know the answers to these questions, because everyone's obviously just going, can we get a refund? I'm like, I have spent your money on organising your hen, so I need to get refunds from the venues, from like, obviously there's costs I couldn't get back. Like, I was then renting an office, I was renting, I was like, not like I've spent it and I can't get it back, but I was like, if I refund everyone, I don't have anything left, because until we get refunds from everyone and the venues, we're not giving refunds. And I was like, what? This was not in the plan.
Oh my God, so what did you do?
I went by the ethos again that I've always tried to go for, which is just try and actually be honest with people, speak to people, talk to them. And I think I put together an email explaining exactly the situation that we were in, and explaining where I was financially with it, so that it was super clear with clients, and saying it was possible to get a refund. But I think, like a lot of small businesses, was like, please, could you consider a reschedule instead? And about 80% said yes to reschedules.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've still paid for like some chateau in somewhere that we were all going on some weekend that we were like, yeah, fine, we'll reschedule it for like 3 years later, and then never happened. Yeah. But I guess I hint, because it's like, yeah, because the wedding will be postponed, presumably. It will happen eventually, so the hens will happen eventually.
There was it kind of kept happening, because at first we were like, oh, we'll be open by summer, and then it was like, oh no, we won't. So it kind of felt pretty cyclical. But we scraped through it, and I even scraped through it. I got through it pretty well based on the kindness of clients, and it was during lockdown that, when the dust had settled a bit, that I qualified in yoga and fitness, and that moved me into where I am now.
Amazing. And then what happened with the business?
So over lockdown, I delved into spirituality. I'd have never called myself a spiritual person, really, ever. I enjoyed yoga a bit.
And so your mum was into yoga as well?
Yeah, but just as like, actually, I say just as a thing, but we've talked about this, me and my siblings, my mum now doesn't have a temper. Like, she doesn't really. She is a bit like fiery sometimes, but you wouldn't ever say Sheila's got a temper. She had a temper growing up, like a really bad temper. And we were all like, I think it's when she started yoga that she lost her temper, as in like it went. So she'd practiced for years, but I don't think she'd consider herself spiritual in that sense. She's a devout Christian, and she's always said she doesn't feel comfortable joining in with the chanting and stuff, and she respects the traditions, but will also respect her religion as well.
Huh. Yeah, because I guess with yoga, I don't know, I guess you can do the gym yoga, which can be more, it's like Pilates or something, and it can even feel weird if they try and do, say, like namaste, you know.
Yeah.
But then I feel like as you get into it, it's impossible to not end up in studios or work in that feel very like this is something. And because that's what yoga is, right? It's not just the movement bit. It's
the movement's like I think the tiniest strand of it. But yeah, she I'd done yoga on and off, but just kind of enjoyed it, and she did it, and it wasn't that she would ignore the spiritual part of it. Like, I think she was never someone that, like, I really can't stand this when we really just westernize it. I think, and I know a lot of people would potentially have issues with this, but it's not like she ever pretended it didn't exist. It was just more she, I think, respected it, but also was core with her beliefs as well. But I'd always just enjoyed it, and it was kind of based on what we were talking about before. I'd really developed a genuine love for fitness. I fell in love with it, and it was what kept me during my days at the laptop when work got really busy, because I was working from home on my own. It was quite solitary, and I just got into going to the gym, and it was the first time in my life I really developed a really regular fitness routine and community, and fell in love with it, but for the joy of it rather than for weight loss or anything else. And I'd started for fun a fitness qualification that year, but it just kept on the back burner, and it was in lockdown when everything kind of settled a bit with the company. I was like, I should probably finish my fitness qual. Was delving a lot more into meditation and spiritual practices, and did my fitness qual. And then lockdown carried on, and was like, I think I'm going to do my yoga teacher training. And my mum laughed at me to begin with. She was like, don't be ridiculous, that's like 200 hours or something. And I did it, and then from there just moved into it.
Wait, so how were you, can you do it online?
In the pandemic, yeah.
Wow.
So I did my initial training entirely distance.
Huh. You just find a school to do it through? And
I found the school that, because every teacher training had gone online by this point, and I searched for a while because it's obviously a big financial investment, and finances were something that was a bit stressful at that point, because I was like, I'm not earning a living, I'm on my savings. But they were the first course, at least in the UK, I don't know, I can't remember if it's the world, but in the UK they'd set up as distance pre-pandemic, and they'd been improved by Yoga Alliance International. And I think the fact that I was like, this isn't just a rush, like, oh, there's a pandemic, gotta go online. It was like they were the first course that had gone, we've wanted to do a course that, say, like, because often they're very, you go to India, you do 6 weeks, or you go to wherever and you do 6 weeks and it's intensive. And they were like, we want to make it more accessible for people who, say, like, have a job, have families, have kids. And it was actually, I really enjoyed the course. I actually enjoyed it more than I did do my advanced teacher training in India, which was 5 weeks, just straight practice. And I actually I enjoyed my initial 200 hours more.
Huh. So, and then I guess you were able to start teaching, like, before you were able to get the business fully back on track.
Exactly. Like, it was summer 2020. Things were allowed to open, but like we was having a hen party, not many people. And because we were registered for VAT at the time, we were making a tiny profit, and the VAT charge just took it all away. So I ended up in a loss because of having to pay VAT. So I was just being taxed more than I was earning. And again, that sort of light in that little fire that I get when I'm like, right, project. I was like, I have to start earning a living. I don't want to just run my savings out. And so I would go on, again, I did what I did with the company that the hen company, I just reached out to as many people in the fitness industry as I could, just asking like for advice, being like, would you sit down, would you have a chat? I'm new to the industry, I really want to get stuck in, but I've got no contacts, I don't know how. And I just got my head down and grafted for 4 months until lockdown 2, and would go on these cover pages and would be like, you need a teacher at 5 a.m. for £15 across the other side of town tomorrow, I'm there. And just gradually built up and managed to land a timetable before lockdown 2 of classes.
This was back in London?
This was in between lockdowns, so between 1 and 2.
But in London?
In London, yes.
Got it. Oh my god, cool. Because so many yoga studios shut down in that time as well, right?
And I think I was lucky because I taught a mixture of fitness and yoga. So I kind of, again, the fire in the belly thing, I was like, right, fire is lit, let's invest, let's do it. I got my cycling qualification at the end of the summer. I did my Zumba qualification. I did, and I started continually building up. Like within a year, I did my level 3 PT, I did my second level 2 qualification, I did my level 3 Pilates, I did my bar, I did my body pump. So I was like, I want to make myself an asset to your company, so that if I come and they're like, what do you teach? I'm like, I can, what you need.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, like the big gym franchises survived through that time, yeah. And you could be of use to them. Cool. And then you ended up in one of the fanciest gyms in London. I was like,
yeah, third space. I remember it so distinctly. I saw, this was in lockdown 3, and in lockdown 2, I'd set up a fitness timetable on Zoom, and it went really well. And I actually loved lockdown 2 because I was like, I'm making money for the first time in 7 months. And
oh, because you're doing remote stuff.
Yeah, and I was like, I have a community and this is working. This is crazy. And I really was happy. Because lockdown 1 just felt a bit like I was just trying to plug holes in, like, I don't know, a sinking ship. And the dance company was still open. It was still there, just hibernating and not able to do anything. And in lockdown 3, I saw this job advert for Third Space. I'd kind of been aware of them, but I'd never really, didn't know much. And just the way they were, when I looked and researched into them, I was like, the opportunities that are there for growth, the standards that are there. And I still keep this video. There's a video that I had to record for an audition for them of HIT. And I look back now and it is terrible. Like, it's really encouraging to look back on, to be like, to see and feel the growth, and to also be like, it's okay to be really bad at something when you start. Because I look back at that and I'm like, oh, it makes me die inside watching it. But I would never have got better if I hadn't been rubbish to start and put myself out there. And they gave me a rejection. But what made me then be like, I really want to work for these guys, was their rejection wasn't just, most gyms I worked for that rejected me were either just straight off no, or just didn't get back to you. They sent really detailed feedback, a really encouraging feedback process of, this is where to work on, this is what you need to improve, this is what we liked, and this is when we want you to apply again. And I think the care, again, being nice to work with, made me go, I really want to work for them. And I auditioned for them 6 months later, and that time got in, and then again just thought, and it worked, how much of an asset, how nice can I be to work with? And within 6 months I was their lead trainer at their biggest site, which was crazy when a year ago I was like, I got rejected. And it just, I think I keep learning from that of, don't be afraid to be rubbish and take risks and see where you want to go and enjoy the journey there. But lastly, to answer your question, because I've gone off on a tangent, I'm such a chatty northerner, about the hen company very briefly opened that summer. I was balancing both at once with the help of an assistant. It was wild. That was about when I went to therapy at the end of that year for burnout, because it was horrendously busy and all my choice. And then at the start of 2022, I decided to make things smaller with the hen company, because I just felt like my passion for fitness and yoga was growing and my passion for hens was dying. And then at the start of 2023, I was like, my passion for hens is gone. So I was like, I don't want to run something that I don't enjoy anymore. So I closed it and actually sold it to a competitor who had helped me all the way through the pandemic and had supported me really heavily with stuff that my assistant couldn't do throughout when I was growing and fitness was my entire focus. This company, we were rivals, and yet she was so wildly supportive with just helping. And so I sold it to her for not a very big rate, but was delighted just to be like, again, if you're nice to work with, I was like, I just want you to have it. And I'm so happy it's going to someone who's helped me out so much.
Amazing. I mean, and the fact that it survived, like it's such a young business, then surviving the pandemic when all your business was destroyed, and like you surviving that, and then it like comes out on the other side, and then you're able to sell it. It's like, and everything you learned along the way, and the fact that you did that yourself, like that's so valuable.
I felt very proud of it, and I think that's an ethos I try and live by as best as I can. Like, I'm very flawed, like all of us, I think. I notice it's one thing I clock more as I've delved into the spiritual world, and that's now my main line of work. Like, I don't even do the fitness stuff anymore and just teach yoga, breathwork. Is often when obviously we talk like stuff like this, or when I'm teaching a yoga class, it's like a highlights reel and it looks like, oh, you've got everything together, whereas actually it's like, no, we've all got our stuff. This is almost just like you're seeing the more together version. But it's one of my biggest things I try and practice is I want to love what I do, and if I don't love it anymore, it's time to move on. And that's not going with the kind of attitude of like, oh, I can't be bothered, I'm dropping it. But there's so many experiences to have, and there's so much to do and to live, that I just trust that if something else is appearing, I'm going to roll with that. I'm going with that.
Yeah, but you're doing, like, don't sell yourself short. Like, you own a you've come from this place where you're rat infested, whatever, to then like, having built whatever, to own your own space. And it's not like because other people can follow loving what they do, but they're like traveling the world, hitchhiking, lost, whatever, which is also just another journey people have to go on.
And that's one I feel like I not need to go on, but it's the flip side to I think my mum said it now, she's like, she compared me with a lot. I remember we had so many beach walks over lockdown. It was where we'd have heart-to-hearts, and it was so beautifully bonding. And she was like, you just remind me at the moment of a Jack in the Box. She's like, stuff keeps happening. And yes, there were people in way worse situations. I was very privileged with a lot of things that happened, but just business-wise and work-wise, it just kept getting knocked down and wiped down, and it's like hit after hit after hit. And she was like, you just get back up again. She's like, something happens, you have a cry, and then it's like, oh, then she's launched off again. She's got the next idea, and she's doing it. And I love that, and I see that as a real strength. But at the same time, I feel an envy or I look at people who are like, I'm gonna go to Mexico for 6 months, and I struggle to do that. And it's something I'm really working towards, as well as and chipping away at and working at, and it's slow. I love work and I love creating stuff, and for me, they're pulling back and trusting and actually letting go a bit more and doing the stuff to enjoy and relax, as well as the building excitement, is something I find much harder. So I find sometimes I look at people that are able to go, I'm just going to go traveling, and I'm like, I struggle with that.
Okay, you have to go. I feel like we haven't even got to the spiritual side, but that's fine.
We can talk about. We can do a little longer if we need to. Yeah.
Well, I guess what does your life look like now, and what's the vision for the next couple of years or for this chapter?
So I've moved into now, again, just through strands of it's felt like it's happened very naturally. I've stopped teaching fitness pretty much. I teach a bit of bar and Pilates. And I've got into working with, I think I've just rebranded what I call myself, and I'm properly trying to, I think, moving forward with this is breath, body, soul. I think working with body and in a way that really gets people to celebrate their bodies. I think talking about the history I've come from with years and years of hating my body and berating it, I love, and I think my core and my heart with what I do is getting people to find the joy in their bodies and getting people to find movement as celebration and movement as a joyful thing and movement as love. And I think what made me when I landed in fitness and yoga, and what made me go, oh, this is it. It was never acting. It was never any of that. Was I couldn't stop talking about it. It was, I don't drink much now, but I still was drinking a medium amount at the time. I thought of the analysis where I was like, when I have a couple of glasses of wine, I talk about joint mobilization. Like, that's my absolute passion. And I was like, that's what everyone else had about acting. I never had that. And I used to always watch people go on these passionate rants in pubs, and I never got it. I was like, I enjoy it, it's fine. But it was only when I moved into this that I was like, oh, it's this. This is what everybody feels about acting, that I just actually don't, but I thought I did. And I adore my job. Like, I love it so much, and it's just naturally, I think, I smashed my foot up last year, which again was another like loss of control. Like, all my work stopped again because I couldn't walk, couldn't move, and it was a long recovery. And that made me lean more into the softer practices of Pilates, yoga, and that's where again the journey has taken me. And through that, going on retreats, delving into plant medicine and finding the passion for breath, and then I feel like it's merged into this, and it feels like a business, and my business hat is still something that I think works quite hard with launching community and launching retreats and events and building this as a brand, but I now love combining the modality of movement, getting people understanding and joyfully moving their body and using it as a tool for expression and building strength, breath as a tool for regulating, as a tool for connecting, but also as a tool for emotional release, and soul, I think, which is, I think a good thing to wrap up on actually is when I was in one of our little heart-to-hearts that we sometimes have, and my mum isn't, I'm the chatty Kathy, she's much more reserved, and it was when I was talking about fitness and my love of it, and she went, I always knew you'd be a teacher. And I went, how? And it was after I'd got discharged from hospital, one of the earlier times, I was away on, there was this like group skiing holiday, and my brother and sister were younger than me, and they'd been to ski like camp or whatever it was, and they were trying to teach them to ski, and they couldn't do it. And my mum was like, I remember you had been, she was like, you were not, I couldn't recognise you, you were so withdrawn, you were so depressed, you were just not, you just shut off for months, and you went to teach your brother and sister like, oh no, this is how you do it, this is how you ski. And she was like, number one, I saw you light up, like I was like, I'd got my daughter back. And then number two, within a couple of hours they were skiing and they understood it, and you'd made them understand it in a way that they just hadn't been able to. And she was like, I remember looking and being like, she's going to be a teacher in whatever way, and I think that's what's led me here, is this just joy of, I love connecting with people, and I don't know where it'll take me, but connecting with other people and getting
amazing. So I'm like, that's so weird that I'm getting emotional, but I just like feel it.
And it's where I think that it's where I light up. I genuinely, even my latest boss was like, she rarely saw me teach, and she came to a vinyasa class, and she was like, who are you? Like, who are you when you teach? It's like I feel like it's me coming home. I really do, and I genuinely can't think of anything that makes me happier in the world than when I teach and when I connect with others. And I think the acting and the hands and all the rest, it's just been the journey to get here. And I don't know where this journey will be to, whether this is it or whether this is to somewhere else.
Amazing. Okay, quick 3 questions to wrap up. Is there a book that's had a big impact on you?
Oh. One that rings out years ago, I don't know why it rings out, but I read it a lot when I was younger, was Jane Tomlinson's book. It's called The Luxury of Time. She was she had breast cancer and then bone cancer, and she ran the marathon when she had cancer, and I think she got BBC Sports Personality of the Year she just did these incredible sporting feats whilst being terminally ill, and raised millions and millions of pounds for charity. And her husband wrote a book about it. And I think that, again, the topic of someone just seeing stuff and overcoming adversity, it really just kept resonating with me. It was called The Luxury of Time. And I think there's something that really lights me up about reading about when people, especially in really unimaginable situations like that, who see things and go, I can do this and I will. And I think that just had a lasting impact on me when I was younger. Yeah.
How do you stay grounded?
I have to work on this. Like, this is what I mean about trying to be open, I think, with stuff, is that when I teach, and when I teach stuff like yin especially, I can appear like the most grounded person in the world, and I think I often do. And I've had clients come up to me, but someone came up to me the other day and were like, I saw you looking like busy and stressed. I was like, yes, of course. I don't wander around, I wish I did wander around my life being like, namaste, like I'm so zen. So I really, because I find that often teaching grounds me, I really have to actually work hard to be like, you can't just let your work ground you, you have to have your own process as well. I notice ritual when I have really months where I'm in my practice and I'm disciplined with my practice, and that doesn't mean doing it for hours, it means carving out time every day to sit in my space. I usually have cacao, I journal, I meditate. And when I have that ritual there, that's what really grounds me. And I do notice when I lose that ritual, that's when I get a little more scattered, because it's almost like my excited little, I want to do this brain, I've got so many ideas, can get run away without being anchored back.
And final question, what 3 words describe the best version of you?
I think these are kind of ones that my boss gave me. That was my boss when I was lead trainer at Third Space. She said to me, I've never at the same time met someone so grounded and yet so much like a tornado. And I think it is really true, because I feel both elements in it. So I think earthy is one, and I kind of resonate that with northernness. There's almost like earthy, soul of the earth character. But then second one, energetic. Like, I have a lot of fizz, and it's almost like the yin and the yang, and both are always present at the same time for me. And then the last one, probably passionate. I'm the type of person, I feel things hard, and which leads for beautiful stuff and for hard stuff, but I lead quite passionately and emotionally, I think. And I used to hate that, and now I work with it, but I now actually see it as a strength. I'm like, it's what I think sometimes allows me to connect with others in a way that I do with teaching, because if someone cries, I really feel that. I will never show this to a class ever, but often I'll be teaching and I will cry sometimes as I teach in yin, because I'll just feel, and I'd never ever I'd never put that on a class or openly show, but I'll just be talking and teaching, and occasionally I'll just be wiping tears away from my face, because it's just this, sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's just I don't know, passion of just I've genuinely cried quite a bit in yin of just feeling really lucky to be there. I'm really happy that this is what I get to do as a job, and being this is insane that this is what I'm doing.
Amazing. I'm trying to think if I cried when I did yin with you. And I think I did at some point. Sometimes in Shavasana, it's just
someone said to me, a yoga teacher, she was like, there's no yin, there's no crying without the word yin. I was like, yeah, it's true. I cry in yin all the time. But weirdly, as the teacher, but just only ever a few tears. Rather than, yeah.
And how do people find you if you want to be found?
My website, which is currently movementwithjenny.com, might be becoming breathbodysoul.co.uk within the next month or two. And on Instagram, I'm at movementwithjenny. Yeah. And I'm at the lodge all the time. I run 2 events a month: breathwork, sounds, yoga, and my focus for this year, I think I want to build a community. I'm like, let's get the events community big and building, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm so excited for cacao.
Tomorrow.
And breathwork. Amazing. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share it with someone. And also, a random 23-year-old just messaged me on Instagram and told me he found the podcast through the algorithm. So it actually does help if you review the podcast and subscribe or follow. And then you get to find out about future episodes as well.